Monday, book lovers! Today is part 2 on our Mythology Monday, where we're talking about Greek mythology specifically. And as I promised last week, this week we are going to be talking about the heroes of Greek mythology. And a couple of heroes specifically whose journeys either have influenced some of the character arcs in my book, or the heroes themselves have influenced some of the characters in my books as well. So, in no particular order whatsoever, because I forgot my notes and now I'm gonna wing this Mythology Monday for you. But we're gonna start with one of my favorites, who is the one who went, I think it's Theseus. If I'm wrong, I apologize. Like I said, I misplaced my notes. But we are gonna talk about the hero who went through the labyrinth, which I think was Theseus. And so he was brought to Crete and he was forced to go into the labyrinth to kill the Minotaur essentially and survive, because there were two kingdoms that were fighting with each other, and they sacrificed, Kingdom A had to sacrifice so many, like various numbers depending on the versions and that, but they had to sacrifice a certain number of both young men and women every year to the labyrinth so that the Minotaur was fed and wouldn't go crazy. So because they lost the war or the battle or whatever, they had to sacrifice these people to Kingdom B. And then that year, Theseus, who was the prince, I believe, of the kingdom, I think it was Athens actually, he decided to go in order to kill the Minotaur. So he goes there, he woos the princess, she gives him this golden thread, and he puts it down and finds his way into the labyrinth, where he can find the Minotaur and beat it and then get back out, because that was the other thing. It's not just about getting in, beating the monster, you then have to find your way back out of this thing. And so because of that, he got the golden thread, like the thread, and he followed his way back through that to get back out, and then left the poor girl, because that's just how boys are. But that's not part of the journey or the story. That's just how Greek heroes were. Woo the girl, take the girl, then dump her somewhere, because she's not exciting anymore now that you have her. But anyway, so he went into the labyrinth and he beat the Minotaur. Now, fun fact, a labyrinth and a maze are actually used interchangeably in modern language, but they are not actually the same thing. One of them has one entrance and one exit and only one path through, and so it's like a big mix-up thing. You have to find your way out. The other one is actually one long path that you just meander your way through and end up coming out. So labyrinth, maze. Now you learned something. So that's actually my favorite Greek mythology story, which is why in book 5 there's a labyrinth. It's actually designed right over here. I haven't finished designing it yet because I'm still working on it, but it's in my head and it's in a rough draft. And so I have a labyrinth, and then my husband 3D printed me this so that I can build my labyrinth and make sure that everything works the way that I want it to. See? These little pieces that my husband 3D printed for me because he loves me so much. So that's my toy. The other stories that I have a lot of influence from, clearly the heroes are very brave. They're willing to go far for the ones that they love. That is a lot in my story, and not just in the case of the boy chasing after the girl. Yes, Prince Heir is willing to fight really hard for Alex and to prove his love and his worthiness to her, but she is equally willing to bend over backwards and fight for her kingdom, for the people that she loves, because I'm not about to just only have the boys be the ones fighting the battles here. All of the women in my kingdoms are perfectly capable of handling themselves, as well as defending and honoring their kingdoms in that way as well. Edith is the youngest daughter of the Nile family, and they are the guardians of the royal family. And then Jessica is the daughter of the general of Dayton. So while she looks beautiful and can behave herself as a proper lady, the girl will beat your ass if she thinks you are actually going to be a risk to anybody that she cares about too. So heroes play a huge part of my world, not just for the boys, remember that is really important to me, but the journey of the hero is something that is a big part of my book, because a lot of my story is character driven. And so Aaron and Alex and Michael, Stefan, they all end up having a hero type arc at some point. I won't get too much into depth of them because a lot of them come later, and I don't want to do a lot of spoiling and that kind of stuff. But, you know, they all have some kind of a heroic arc that they have to overcome, some kind of battle and journey that they have to get through in order to become the people that they're supposed to be. Very much like the different stories in Greece. You've got Jason, and I think it was Jason who had the golden fleece. Like, there's so many stories. You had Hercules with the 12 trials. You had Oedipus, no, not Oedipus, Odysseus, who went to the underworld and brought back his love. Like, there are so many amazing stories that exist in Greek mythology with the heroes, all of which are mingling around in my head and sneaking their way into various parts of my characters. And so there are some that I have purposefully picked and yanked from, the way that I'm using the labyrinth in book 5 to serve a very specific purpose for 2 characters' growth. But there are other parts that have just worked their way in, and I don't want to list them because of spoilers, but I do think that it is really important to note that heroic journeys have been around for thousands of years, and it's one of those things that people enjoy reading about somebody stepping forward and finding their place and being more than they thought that they could be or they were meant to be. And while in Greek mythology a lot of these hero characters are half gods, I think that's just a way of allowing us to see the best of ourselves. And so we want to be that better part of ourselves. And if you're half god and you're half human, you can follow the god part, which is the better part of yourself, in order to achieve this great thing. And so I've taken aspects of the mythology and parts of the stories and the things that were really successful and that are meaningful to me or would work in my world, and I've used those bits and pieces. Just like we have seafaring people, we have a labyrinth. I've got lots of creatures that exist in Greek mythology that are going to be popping up in my world in different times and places and things like that. And then I've got other like magical artifacts too, like we have the pearls and the swords of value and things like that. So this is all stuff that mattered as well in Greek mythology. You know, they had the oracles that had the pearl or were able to see through, like look into water and see the future. It's very similar to the way that Cassandras have their visions, or that the pearls can show you the past, the present, and the future, like the fates in mythology. So Greek mythology has snuck its way into so much of my world with the heroes and the gods and all these other trivial aspects of mythology. Like, exactly, like my 3 pearls are literally like the fates in mythology, the past, the present, and the future. And the pearls are used to see the past, the present, and the future by the non-Cassandra sorcerers. So it's a really fun way to take what exists in a different kind of mythology, like the fates and that, and flip it on its head a little bit and make a difference. So I have done that the same way that there are swords in my story that matter, just like the sword in King Arthur's tale is so important. And then that came from the Merlin line as well and made its way into our world. So it's one of those things where when you're reading my book, if you like Greek mythology, you're going to find so many nuggets in there with this kind of stuff that I cannot even tell you, because I have just taken all the mythologies, the Celtic, all of it, and just smushed it together and done so many fantastic things with it that just make it so much fun to dive into this world and figure out where everything is coming from. And sometimes you can find it out really quickly and easily. Other times it takes a while, and it's going to take a couple mentions and visions of things for you to actually figure out just where it came from. So thanks so much for joining me on this Mythology Monday. Make sure you subscribe if you're not already so you don't miss any. And happy reading, and have a lovely Monday. Bye, everybody.